Dr. Vikki Petersen here. Being a clinician and seeing patients on a regular basis and having gluten intolerance be one of the major things we do here at the clinic. It's certainly not the only thing, but something near and dear to our hearts, especially after writing our book, The Gluten Effect, and we're being known for that, so we're certainly seeing more patients afflicted by gluten intolerance. And one of the most frustrating things is when a patient is striving so hard to maintain their gluten-free diet, yet they sometimes have reactions that to them, they think they've been glutenated or glutenized or anyway exposed to gluten, but for the life of them they cannot figure out where it might have come from because they're trying to be so stringent with their diet. So I really wanted to address this issue because a recent study came out that has shed a great deal of light on this, and I think it can be helpful. So it kind of goes back to many years ago thinking that oats had gluten. And we thought that because people who are gluten intolerant would eat oats, they'd feel terrible, just as if when they ate gluten, like wheat, rye, or barley, and they had the same kind of response, and so we started to think that oats was also a glutinous grain. Now, of course, we know it's not, and the problem with oats was that it was contaminated. Oat fields were adjacent to wheat fields. Companies that were processing oats were also processing glutinous grains, and it was really a cross-contamination issue. So a study that was recently done has brought to light that that is continuing to happen in areas that we really didn't know about. So what they did was they tested grains like millet, rice, soy, buckwheat, sorghum, and these were grains that were produced in a facility that also did other things that contained gluten, but they weren't, the manufacturer didn't feel that there was cross-contamination, so they didn't have to put the warning that this was processed in a plant that also processed gluten-containing grains necessarily. So there was no warning on these. It was just supposed to be pure soy, pure rice, etc. Yet, when they tested these grains, 32% of them had well above the 20 parts per million that are considered safe for people to consume gluten. And some of them had in the thousands of parts per million. So there was definitely a source of cross-contamination. So where does that leave us? I don't like to be afraid to eat. I don't like my patients to be afraid to eat. And so when you're extremely sensitive, as most of us are who are gluten sensitive, I think at this point, until our labeling laws get better and until institutions realize that they have to really test everything for gluten, even though inherently a soybean is gluten-free and a grain of rice is gluten-free, until that awareness occurs, it's probably safer to work with companies that are dedicated companies, meaning they don't deal with any gluten-containing products. So when you're preparing products, and it's pretty easy these days because there are so many products out there that are dedicated gluten-free facilities. So at this point, if you are someone like that, I mean, if you're on a gluten-free diet and you're feeling great and everything's fine, then not to worry. But if you are someone who is getting plagued by feeling ill, feeling like you're getting into gluten, even though you really know you are not, then likely what's happening is this type of cross-contamination. So be diligent, work with companies that are dedicated gluten-free facilities, and see if that doesn't make a good difference for you. So I hope that's helpful and you find it informative, and until next time, I wish you very good health.